Welcome back to What the Hype, where this week we hope that you're ready for it because we're diving into Taylor Swift's Reputation era and album. Taylor has been keeping Taylor's version of this album close to the chest for quite some time, despite the fact that a lot of Swifties keep thinking that the release is just around the corner. So we hope that this kind of tides you over until that day comes, whenever it does. And for those of you that are just casual Taylor Swift fans, I hope that revisiting the Reputation era will kind of help you understand this album and the lore behind it a little bit more than maybe you did before. So I'm Pam and I will be your host today. And with me today, I have Eric and Andrew. How are you all doing?
Hello. Excited to hear everything that you have to share today, Pam.
Yeah, well, it's quite a bit. But before we do that, we also want to welcome our special guest host. We also have Meg here, who some of you might recognize from the Mugglecast Girls Takeover episodes. Welcome to What the Hype, Meg. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
And I think you're also sporting a Reputation accessory, right?
I am. Well, it's not specifically Reputation, but I got this in a shop like 2 years ago, and it's like a Python arm cuff, and I was like, this feels like the proper episode to wear.
Perfect place.
Darn, you know, I have my light up stick that I got at the Reputation tour, and I didn't think to have it with me.
Man.
Darn.
You know what? My pet boa constrictor is actually in the living room. I forgot to bring them over.
Oh, okay, lovely. Well, it's so lovely for you to have brought your boa along.
Close enough.
Yeah. Well, before we get started, I did want to ask you all, what percentage of Taylor Swift fan would you say you are, and how familiar are you with kind of the lore that comes along with the Reputation album on the whole?
Knowing how deep the rabbit hole can be traveled, I feel like it's hard to measure to say, but the easiest comparison, like not for the first time, is comparing the fandoms between Taylor Swift and Harry Potter. And I have to admit, I have a lot of love for Taylor Swift, but I'm probably the Taylor Swift fandom equivalent of somebody that just saw the Harry Potter movies and really liked them and maybe took friends to see them multiple times, but did not do the podcast or did not do, other things. So I'm a little bit deeper than surface level. Like I talk to people who are deep Taylor Swift fans, so I feel like I know stuff through osmosis, but that would be my level.
So you're Swiftie adjacent.
Well, yeah, but I genuinely like her. I just think is there
Nice.
a lower limit for being a Swiftie?
No, I mean, Swifties are pretty generous. Like if you want to be a Swiftie, we'll open our arms to you. We're not.
I mean, I have a favorite song, a favorite album.
Yeah, I'd say I'm more than a casual fan. Pam, probably not quite at your level. But I know the basic lore of Reputation, and I know every song on the album. But I'm excited to learn even more details.
And I would say I'm similar to where Eric is at. And I've always really appreciated, especially in recent years, just how passionate the Taylor Swift fandom is, trying to decode all the little secrets, some of which we're going to discuss today. And I just love how passionate Taylor's fans are and all the bones that she throws fans. So I really admire the fandom and I enjoy her music. I just don't listen to it a lot.
That's fair. Yeah. That's totally fair. Yeah. And it is, to your point about all of the bones or the Easter eggs, if you will, it is fun to be a Taylor Swift fan. If you like, you can get into it as much or as little as you want to, but decoding is certainly part of that. And hopefully we decode a few things for you all today as well. Just to get everybody caught up here, before we actually hopped on to record this episode, I asked everybody that was joining me to do a couple of things. The first was to listen to Taylor's Reputation album, just the original version, because like I said, we don't have Taylor's version yet. And I wanted everybody to pay attention to the use of 808s. And that is, for anybody that doesn't know, 808s it's a drum kit that was created in like the 80s, I think, if I remember correctly. So an 808, specifically, the reason that this comes up a lot is because of the drum kick noise. And in popular music, you hear that a lot in hip hop. and it doesn't actually sound like a drum kick. What happens is they kind of extend the sound because the drum kick already kind of has like this bassy, deeper undertone. And then they add distortion to it. So it actually ends up sounding a lot more like a bass. And you hear it a lot in EDM as well. So that features heavily on Taylor Swift's Reputation album. And there's a couple of different reasons for that, which we'll probably get into as the discussion goes along. But I wanted you all to pay attention to that as you were listening, perhaps a little bit more, in a dedicated fashion for the first time, because I just think that it kind of helps put a lot of the stuff into scope here. And then I
can't
also asked
unhear
everyone,
it now that you've pointed that out.
Right. And we'll link maybe to the video that I sent you all just so that you could kind of get a sense for like what you were listening to. It's very apparent when you kind of hone in on that. And then I also asked you all to watch the Look What You Made Me Do music video and a little quick, like slightly longer video that points out some of the Easter eggs, just so you can get a feel for how much she really packs in for fans. So that's everybody's homework. That was everybody's homework. And like I said, we'll try and link to some of this stuff as well in the show notes if you guys want to take a deeper dive along with us.
Yes, Miss Pam.
In order to really understand Taylor Swift's Reputation album, I think it's important to kind of get a sense for the series of events that kind of led up to her making this album. And so as a result of that, for our 411 breakdown, I've put together a very brief timeline into the Reputation era for all of you. And in order to make this a little bit more fun for Andrew, Eric, and Meg, and also anybody who happens to hang out with us over on our YouTube channel, please subscribe, by the way. That really helps us out. I've also put together a PowerPoint presentation to kind of help move this along. So that'll be a fun visual if you guys want to hang out with us. Oh, no,
you really are a teacher.
The video, the video version of this podcast, but it will not hinder your ability to like listen to just the audio if you don't want to go watch the video version. All right. Well, here we go. Let's dive into Taylor Swift's Reputation era. A brief timeline. Like I said, it would take way longer than we have if I were to cover everything, but these are like the big points that I want you all to take in here. So in order to really get started, we got to time travel all the way back to the year 2009. And specifically to September 13th. This is the fated day when Kanye crashes Taylor's acceptance speech for the Best Female Music Video at the MTV VMAs. And it's a day that kind of lives on in infamy. I feel like we all probably remember this happening because we were the target demo for the VMAs in 2009 when all of this went down.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that this moment is one of the biggest pop culture moments of our lifetimes for its shock value. And I still remember at the time and in the weeks that followed, everybody being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Kanye basically ruins poor little Taylor Swift's very important moment in the spotlight. It was just so out of left field. And at this time, she wasn't who she was today. So it really did feel like an attack on Taylor.
Yeah, You Belong With Me was her first crossover hit. So you're right. She wasn't like Taylor Swift, the crazy big pop star she is today. She was really just getting started. And yeah.
And the fact that he was doing it like on Beyonce's behalf, who really didn't ask him to do that. Mm-hmm. And like, so when I think of this moment, I think of them going to Beyonce in the crowd with like this shocked look on her face saying like, Kanye, what are you doing?
Yeah. And one thing I do want to point out here, since you brought up Beyonce, she's such a class act as we've always known her to be. She actually gave up her acceptance speech time later towards the end of this VMAs in particular, so that Taylor could have her moment to give her acceptance speech. So
I forgot about that.
Yeah. But these people were forever linked from this moment on because people's memories are long and pop culture history spans even longer than that. One thing that I had forgotten actually was that Kanye's PR team really kind of went on the defensive right away after this happened. Because the next day he was actually on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and he actually apologized on national television because the backlash to what he did was, forgive the pun, very swift from quite a lot of people, including President Obama, who called him a jackass. Y'all remember that?
That's right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it doesn't really seem like they really squared away their beef, because a few days after his Tonight Show appearance, Taylor was actually on The View, and she revealed that Kanye had yet to reach out to apologize personally, which would have been a nice touch. So it really kind of seems like it was more for good PR for him to kind of try and smooth that over. So after this, we got to jump over to 2015, because this is where things get interesting. We're back at a major award show, this time at the Grammys on February 8th. And Taylor and Kanye are photographed looking really friendly. There's also photographs with Taylor, Kanye, and Kim Kardashian, who he was married to at the time. And also Taylor, Kanye, Kim, and Jay-Z. And Jay-Z in particular is important to point out, because in an interview with Vanity Fair later on in 2015, in August, Taylor actually reveals that it was actually her friend Jay-Z who encouraged her and Kanye to bury the hatchet. So it's just interesting that it took all of these years, but then also there was like a third party mediator that was really trying to smooth things over there for the greater good.
It's just such a profoundly shitty thing for Kanye to have done, with very questionable intent and no positive results. I don't think you do recover from part of you, I think, from that sort of just very selfish and hurtful act. I think we see the ramifications of that in her music for many years to come.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not for us to tell anybody when they should get over an event they deem to be traumatic. And she talks about that a lot in her Netflix documentary, Miss Americana, where she says that at the time she didn't realize that the audience was booing Kanye. They thought they were booing her. She thought they were booing her because they agreed with him. And to be so young, and to be stood in front of a room full of peers, people you look up to. She was a fan of Kanye at the time as well, and think that everybody hates you because you beat out Beyonce. I mean, I would also probably feel pretty shitty about that too, you know? Yeah. So moving right along here, we're still in 2015, but we're towards the end of the year. And I wanted to highlight the fact that right around Christmas, Taylor hits 60 million followers on Instagram. Funnily, she actually surpasses Kim Kardashian as the most followed person on this app. And she does this because she's been receiving a major fame boost due to the popularity of 1989, which had come out the year prior in October. And also she's on this massive 1989 world tour. She is quite literally everywhere, and she is inescapable. I don't know if y'all remember 2015, 2014, but it really, like, she was the it girl, you know?
She and the Squad.
And Blank Space was just on the radio nonstop. I mean, that I was just hearing Starbucks lovers every moment of the day.
Well, and that album just had like hit single after hit single, every 2 or 3 months. So like it really extended much further than 2014, like into early 2016. You were still hearing these songs on the radio.
And I'm glad, Meg, that you brought up the girl squads, because the 1989 era was not only the era of girl squads, but also the era of pop walks. She was definitely wanting to be seen at these really trendy restaurants where, you know, a lot of celebrities would go to get photographed. Obviously, you know, she had some very famous friends at the time, some of which have fallen off and some of which she's still friends with today. And also, not to get too gossipy, but this was also the era of two very public, very high profile relationships, first with Calvin Harris and then later on with Tom Hiddleston. So lots of reasons for Taylor to be in the news. Obviously, she has always kind of been in the news for her relationship, but because her level of fame had kind of like reached new heights at this time, there were just more eyes on her. And she was also utilizing social media way differently than she does today. So she was really giving fans an inside look into not only her own life, but also some of these relationships as well. And I also wanted you all to keep in mind the overarching theme of overexposure at this time as well, because this really plays a major role into what happens next as we kind of descend into what is actually the Reputation era. So in early 2016, specifically on February 9th, Kanye plays his now infamous single Famous. And he does so for the first time at his Yeezy fashion show at Madison Square Garden. And after he does that, he takes to Twitter and maintains that Taylor was perfectly okay with the lyric, "I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex. Why I made that bitch famous." So that's where all of this starts.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of the camp, in a statement with Billboard, Swift's team says that Kanye did not call her for approval of that line, but actually called to ask Taylor to release his single on her Twitter account. And also doubled down saying that she declined and cautioned him that releasing a song with such a strong misogynistic message was like not the move. So you already kind of start to see these two butting heads over this, despite the fact that just a few months ago, or actually over a year ago now, because we're back in February, right? The last time we caught up with these two was February 2015. They seem to have buried the hatchet here. A few days later is the Grammys. We're back at the Grammys, and Taylor actually uses her acceptance speech for Album of the Year to clap back at Kanye for the famous lyric. She says, "As the first woman to win Album of the Year, the Grammys twice, I want to say to all the young girls out there, there are going to be people along the way that will try to undercut your success or take credit for your accomplishments or your fame. But if you just focus on the work and you don't let those people sidetrack you someday, when you get to where you're going, you're going to look around and you'll know it was you and the people who love you who put you there. And that will be the greatest feeling in the world."
Wow.
Yeah, really powerful words from Taylor. And she's actually addressed this idea going forward a few years later and stuff like that. But this is kind of the first time she really speaks out on this and really doubles down on really owning her own hard work ethic and maintaining that she, did this on her own, which is very much true. So after this, things kind of settle for a few months until we get to June 17th. And this is when Kim K's GQ magazine cover comes out. And in this interview, she talks about Taylor's beef with Kanye. So keep in mind that this is 4 months after the song's debut, but this is also the first time she lets slip that there's video proof of Taylor approving the "that bitch" lyric, which is a big bombshell to drop. In this interview, Kim says she totally knew that that was coming out. She wanted to all of a sudden act like she didn't. I don't know why. She just, flipped all of a sudden. It was funny because on the call with Kanye, Taylor said, "When I get to the Grammys red carpet, all the media are going to think that I'm so against this. And I'll just laugh and say, the joke's on you guys. I was in on it the whole time." And I'm like, wait, but in your Grammy speech, you completely dissed my husband just to play the victim again.
I have to wonder if a big part of Kim's involvement is just what I have to imagine is the insecurity and in some sense shame of having your husband write the lyric, "I would have sex with this other woman." And
Yeah.
I wonder if, rather than coming to Taylor's aid, she just kind of doubled down and very bitterly was like, well, this is actually all on Taylor for lying about this entire thing.
She also said later she'll do whatever to protect her husband, so that factors in as well. But yeah, it's a messy situation for her. And you said earlier that Taylor surpassed Kim on Instagram. Was it? Mm-hmm. So I mean, that right there, I assume you brought up just because Kim is probably jealous of Taylor beating her on Instagram.
I mean, I think it's significant because I don't know if she's jealous, but I do think that Kardashians pride themselves in being famous. Like, fame is really important to them in a way that it's not for some other people.
And number one, they're the kings and queens of fame.
The other thing that I want to specifically hone in on here is Kim's use of the word victim. I don't know if she did that on purpose or not, but I do think that sort of became a rallying cry because even to this day, when you see controversy surrounding Taylor Swift, a lot of what people who don't like her point to is the fact that she's always playing the victim. And I feel like that really kind of starts here with Kim saying she keeps playing the victim and then also later, quote unquote, exposing her for not being the victim, but actually being the snake. So later on this month in June, Kanye drops the famous music video. super controversial. Again, if you thought the lyrics were controversial, nothing compared to the music video, which actually features Kanye in bed with naked wax figures of not only just Taylor, but also his own wife, Donald Trump, Anna Wintour, Bill Cosby, and so many more. Do you all remember when this dropped? It was big.
Yeah, and it was super creepy.
Yeah, it was.
It was
It's like we don't want to see
extremely
people
creepy.
naked. Yeah. I mean, at the time, we also weren't talking about like revenge porn in the same way or deep fakes in the same way. But if you think about something like this dropping now, people would be having a fit.
And this, I think, is really like, for me, this is the main offense. Like, I do remember hearing the controversy with the lyrics and being kind of like, oh, that's kind of shitty of Kanye to write that. But I don't know. Maybe that's not for me to speak on. But I do remember this music video dropping and feeling like sickened by it. Like taking someone's their autonomy, taking their own private nude body and putting that in a video to show millions of people.
Yeah.
It was just yucky.
Without consent. Yeah. So also very close to this time, Calvin Harris re-enters the picture, even though by July they had long since been broken up and Taylor had moved on to dating Tom Hiddleston. And the reason that he comes back into play is because it leaks in the media that Taylor actually co-wrote his hit with Rihanna, This Is What You Came For. And she did it under a pseudonym. And he takes offense to this because he feels like he's being discredited for this track that is all over the radio during the summer. I remember this being a big radio hit at the time. And he just can't take the fact that, you know, Taylor's kind of stealing the limelight from him a little bit. He goes on a Twitter rampage about this, tweets quite a bit. But the part that I found particularly interesting is that he ends his Twitter rant with, please focus on the positive aspects of your life because you've earned a great one. I know you're off on tour and you need someone new to try and bury like Katy Perry, etc. But I'm not that guy. Sorry, I won't allow it. So he brings up this past feud that Taylor had with Katy Perry. It happened kind of right before the 89 era and stemmed kind of through it. And it was all about like backup dancers. So Bad Blood is supposedly a dig at Katy Perry. But I think this kind of like really feeds into the palm of the hand of not only Kim Kardashian, but also Kanye West, because you have somebody that she was previously in a relationship with calling her out and also kind of like saying that she's a little bit manipulative as well.
And I think he's acting this way because he's feeling emasculated. Like it's no longer his song. It was actually Taylor's.
Right.
Can I just say that like celebrity Twitter really used to just be like the Wild West?
It did.
Like,
it was great.
There's so much more reserved now.
Yeah, now it's like they've all got PR managers telling them like,
that's because look at what happens. There are decades-long feuds. There are entire. I mean, it probably printed a lot of money, but you know.
Yeah. Important to note as well that this is actually the first time Taylor Swift is over party trends on Twitter, but it's not the last, and it definitely doesn't make as big of a dent as it will coming up very shortly. So just one day later, on July 14th, Kim Kardashian doubles down in a new teaser for the July 17th episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And she actually defends talking shit about Taylor. And this is where what Andrew was pointing out a few slides earlier comes into play. She says she'll do whatever to protect her husband. And I also wanted to point out that this is where the what would happen if you just called Taylor up meme stems from as well, which is still really popular on TikTok today. So it's kind of amazing, like how much of this lore has entered into the pop culture zeitgeist and managed to stay there. On July 17th, right after this Keeping Up with the Kardashians episode releases is when Kim actually drops footage of this alleged phone call between Kanye and Taylor. And she does it on her Snapchat, of all places.
Very 2010s of her.
Yes. So we do finally get this phone call. Huge violation because you're not actually supposed to record phone calls without people's consent. At least in California, that's the big no-no rule. But it is important to point out that the full video of this phone call actually leaks a few years later in 2020. And that is when it's actually apparent that Kim posted a heavily edited version in an effort to make it appear like Kanye had Taylor's support this whole time. But this is definitely a huge blow for Taylor. People really start to distrust her as a result of this. Like, why wouldn't you? Because there's video proof of something that they've been doubling down on. So absolutely insane time. Now, this is where things start to happen very quickly, because after this, Taylor goes to Instagram and she posts this like long notes app, and she fires back and she's like, we're in this phone call. Did I say it was okay? I was okay with Kanye calling me that bitch. Like, you don't hear it because it doesn't happen. And also important to note that this is where she accidentally births the "I would very much like to be excluded from this narrative" meme, which is making light of a very serious conversation, I know. But the fact that like this part is what people really honed on to kind of really puts into perspective, at least for me, how Taylor's really kind of very quickly falling from grace, and specifically from public grace, as a result probably of being so overexposed and so seen in the media.
Yeah. And the sentence was just kind of clunky, and that particular sentence was just kind of funny and weird for anybody to say.
Yeah, exactly.
So what about it is so like, I would like to be excluded from this narrative? Like, that seems pretty fair, right?
Yeah, I just think people thought at the time, I remember people thinking it was so dramatic of her to say that. And so they thought it was funny.
Okay.
Or just say, leave me out of this. Not, I would very much like to be excluded from this narrative.
So then
it's
it
a
was
mouthful.
like,
Yeah, it really is very wordy.
You would go to work and like, like say like, Andrew would be like, Pam, can you do this? I'd be like, I would very much like to be excluded from this narrative.
Yeah, just say no. Like,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I probably made many of the similar mistakes.
In hindsight,
Yeah.
I totally understand why it's like not funny at all. But in 2016, this was what people thought was peak humor. And yeah, I really it was a concept that really took off really quick because, the internet likes to make jokes of everything. So half not surprised.
Yeah.
All right. So we're getting to the end here almost, I promise. Next, Kim actually delivers what I feel like is the final blow, or the final nail in the coffin, if you will. She takes another swipe at Taylor and tweets, wait, it's legit National Snake Day. They have holidays for everybody. I mean, everything these days. And right after this happens, Taylor's comments across all socials are just flooded with snake emojis, and hashtag Taylor Swift is over party trends again, but this time it trends worldwide. And it was trending for quite a while. Like, I remember watching this go down on Twitter in real time, and it was insane just to see how many people were getting in on this and using it as an excuse to finally rag on Taylor and like, to hate on her and stuff like that. It was absolutely wild.
And this is like a worldwide cyberbullying incident. Like,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift.
Yeah. And so when you put it into that context, you can really see why she, like, this affected her so much. I don't know how you see this and don't like take it personally. Like, it's really easy to tell people like, oh, just like let it roll off you, but at the time, like, canceling was a big thing. She didn't know if she was actually going to be able to come out on the other side of this unscathed. I would probably also think my career was over.
Yeah, it hurts to be attacked online, and imagine at this scale.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, from like big people too. The Kardashians, like, they have a huge platform,
I did watch the Miss Americana documentary when it came out, and I haven't watched it since. But I do remember specifically a scene where she's talking about this and how it was trending worldwide. And she says, like, do you know how many people have to hate you to be tweeting that enough to get it trending worldwide?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really puts it into perspective there. We were in 2016, yes. So now we'll fast forward to 2017, because this is where things get interesting. I wish this click to add text box wasn't there, but that's what happens anyway, it's fine. So from March to August, Taylor, quote unquote, disappears from the limelight. And I put disappears in quotations because, as Meg was talking about just a few seconds ago, the Miss Americana documentary added a lot more context from Taylor herself for how she was feeling during this period of her life. And there's a lot of back and forth argument over this one quote that she has from that documentary where she says, nobody literally saw me for a year. And people that like to split straws like to also denounce that and say, actually, Taylor, that's not true. But if you think about what her life was like in the context of the 1989 era, which was just a couple of years before all this happened, she was everywhere, right? And in March through August of 2017, she's making a concerted effort not to be paparazzi'd, not really to be photographed at all. There were reports of her like leaving her apartment in trunks so that she didn't have to be followed. It's a stark contrast to what she was doing before. So there were a couple of releases and media events that were happening throughout this time, but she really wasn't being seen in the same context that she was before all of this happened. And it was clearly by design. And on August 18th, this is where we're getting to the really exciting part here, you guys. Taylor wipes all of her social media profiles. They completely go dark and nobody knows what's happening because it seemingly comes out of nowhere. But just a few days later, she actually starts posting all of this snake imagery. And it all leads up to August 23rd when she officially announces her sixth studio album, Reputation, which then subsequently dropped on November 10th, 2017. And the only other little thing that I wanted to point out here, which is just more of like a fun fact, something that, you know, will make you look like a bigger fan than you already are, is that you'll often hear Swifties talking about the grid aligning online and getting super excited about that. This visual here is a prime example of what they mean when they talk about the grid aligning. Usually when the grid aligns for Taylor, it means that she's getting ready to drop a big announcement. And she has done so subsequently for every album since Reputation.
Like
so that's why fans will keep up.
So how close is she right now, Pam, to her grid aligning?
That's a good question. I should have looked that up before we started recording, but I ran out of time because I was making this PowerPoint.
Oh, man. Well, it's an amazing PowerPoint.
It's not always fully accurate. There have been times where the grid aligns and nothing happens, but there's also it's way more often that the grid aligns and something does drop. So
her grid's looking very unaligned right now, so I think we're well before
it's
midnight
messy,
right
as a
now.
matter of fact. Yeah.
Pam, I just want to point out how beautiful this PowerPoint is. And I noticed that the start of the PowerPoint, the background of the slides are all kind of like a light blue, and gradually they go to darker blue and then to black.
Thank you.
Very Taylor of her.
Yeah, and Taylor has colors assigned to each of her albums. And the 1989 album is light blue, and the Reputation album is black.
It's black, yes.
Pam,
I bet you also noticed that we started with
Easter
yellow.
Eggs in your PowerPoint about Taylor Swift.
Of course she is.
This is
Of course I
unbelievable.
had to. Yeah, and we started in the Fearless era, so those slides are yellow.
Mhm.
It's just a fun little thing for the Swifties paying attention at home.
Okay,
Well done.
all right.
Well done. Check out the YouTube video to see it.
Yes. Well, I hope that you all learned a little bit here about Reputation or like the lead up to, and we're going to dive into the album itself very shortly. But before we do that, we are going to take an ad break because we're probably overdue for that. So sit tight and we'll be right back. Like I said at the top of the show, I did ask all of you to check out the Look What You Made Me Do music video and also a guide to some of the Easter eggs. I wanted to know if like there were some Easter eggs that you found fun, because that's part of what being a Swiftie is, honing in on these fun facts. She kind of peppers through like little breadcrumbs.
I don't have specific favorite Easter eggs, but that video that you shared with us, which is like, you said it was short, and it is, but it's so jam-packed with Easter eggs that I think that's the amazing part of the video. There's just so many. I assume like every single scene has at least one Easter egg in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the amazing part about it. So my abstract answer is I just love how action-packed it is in terms of Easter eggs.
I like the more explicit Easter eggs, such as things like you wouldn't even consider but like her outfits being outfits from previous public appearances, award ceremonies, music videos. Even at the end of the video, when all the multiple versions of Taylor from like the Taylor multiverse are talking with one another, they each say very specific things that relate to or call back to certain eras. So it's like low-hanging fruit, but to me there's something really iconic and special about Taylor, present day at that time, having to kind of embody previous versions of herself and give them each kind of an affectation. Like, a lot of work went into that music video. And the production value is so insanely high. It looks fantastic. But yeah, I can't even begin to understand the levels of reference. Things like Latin inscriptions on the thrones being a reference to Beyonce. It's this whole thing is wild.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, she does have I think the fearless Taylor who's holding the Moon Man, she actually has her say in the music video, I would very much like to be excluded from this narrative. And you can tell that even she realizes that it was a cringy thing to say because the other Taylors tell her to shut up. Like, stop your whining. So she's very self-aware. And I think that's part of what adds actually to her fame factor for sure. But Meg, you actually wrote down one of my favorites. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I have two favorite Easter eggs from the video. One is a little more serious and one is a little sillier. The more serious one is at one point she's lying in a bathtub full of like diamonds and pearls, and next to her is a single dollar bill representing, I don't remember all the details exactly, but a few years before this album, she was part of a sexual assault case against someone who groped her at like a photo shoot or something. And she sued him for a total of $1 to make the point, like, this is about the principle of it. This is not about me being greedy and trying to get money from you. So just to have that opulent bathtub full of jewels and then just the $1 bill representing that.
And which do you think is more valuable?
For the case.
The imagery is great.
Yeah,
Exactly.
really. And then the silly thing I like is I love the shirts that say I Heart TS, referencing that the photos of her and Tom Hiddleston like frolicking in the ocean, and he's wearing a shirt that says I Heart TS, and it was like a week into them dating. And like, I remember at the time there being a lot of gossip, like, this is obviously a PR relationship. And I remember thinking, well, I don't think it's PR, but like, if one thing were going to make me believe it were PR, it would be Tom Hiddleston wearing a shirt that says I Heart TS. It's just so silly. It's so much.
A couple of other fun facts for you all that you can whip out at your next Swiftie gathering. Some of my favorite facts from this era are, firstly, that Taylor didn't do any media interviews for Reputation. And years later, when she sat down with Ellen, she said, quote, I just basically wanted to make music and not explain it. With my career, I want to do what feels right at the time. And at the time, I'd coined this phrase, there will be no explanation. There will just be reputation, because I am dramatic. It rhymed. It was kind of catchy. And so I stuck with it. So that's pretty fun. And then my other fun fact that I love is that Look What You Made Me Do, while semi-autobiographical, was also partially inspired by the fact that Taylor was binging Game of Thrones and was super into it. So lines like, I've got a list of names and yours is in red underline, are directly inspired by Arya Stark's kill list on Game of Thrones, for example.
Oh, I thought it was inspired by Santa Claus, because the very next lyric she says, checking the list not once but twice. And I was like, she's going to become mall Santa. Look what you made her do. I
guess we've never seen Santa, Arya, and Taylor in the same place. So
that's what I'm saying.
New conspiracy theory.
All right.
Exactly. Well, getting into the actual music that Reputation is comprised of, I wanted to know if you all were familiar with all of this information prior to actually sitting down and listening to the Reputation album.
Bits and pieces, but I've always just generally considered this album her sort of clapback album and her darkest album. And as a casual fan, I always assumed that the album was centered around responding to negative media coverage. Just basically that's it. And to some extent it is. And the album art heavily implies this with the newspaper background and the black and white color scheme. And then several of the most popular songs on the album are pretty dark in tone. I Did Something Bad, Look What You Made Me Do, Don't Blame Me, Ready for It. I think it goes back to those 808s that you brought up earlier, Pam. It's just the look and feel and sound of it is a dark album. And as a bystander, I'm just sort of like, that's about the media and how they've treated her.
And to that point, she does double down on that concept in the tour, the Reputation Stadium tour, which I don't know if you can still watch that on Netflix, but it was on Netflix for the longest time. You can definitely find clips of it online. But the intro for that tour, she basically just spliced together quotes from the media, from broadcast media, talking about her and her reputation. And I mean, like, what a flex to do that, knowing that you're going to also invite that same media to come out and review your tour, most likely, you know?
The Reputation tour is sadly not on Netflix right now. Looks like it left about 8 months ago. Yeah.
That's only in a
R.I.P.
memory.
The 808s, though, the reason I asked you guys to keep those in mind is specifically because of the hip hop tie-in. It's also not lost on a lot of people that one of Kanye's most popular albums he's ever dropped is called 808s and Heartbreak. And when he was making that album, he said something along the lines of that he used a lot of 808s because he felt like that was the sound of hearts breaking. So I think that even though Reputation as a whole is not exclusively about this lifelong almost feud between herself and Kanye, we would be remiss not to, take into account that that was part of what inspired it. And I think that in addition to leaving actual Easter eggs and lyrics and in imagery, Taylor also is very good about leaving Easter eggs in the composition of her music as well, which is why some of Tortured Poets, which is her most recent album, sounds a lot like the 1975. That's by design because she's writing about her relationship with their frontman. That's why Dear John harkens back to John Mayer's very signature sounding guitar. It's because it's about him, but she doesn't need to say that. She can just add that into the production. And I think that part of the reason why Reputation is so 808 heavy is because she wants to show that she can also play Kanye's game, right? She doesn't have to be a rapper to excel in that sound. So, and she does it pretty well on Reputation. It's jarring because it doesn't sound like anything else she's ever done, but she succeeds.
It is jarring, and it does leave the album feeling overall darker. It is, I kind of actually agree the sound of hearts breaking. It certainly is like a heartbeat sound. It's almost sub-aural. You can barely hear it at times, but it's there creating that mood. And the mood is not happy. The mood makes me want to stay in bed all day. Even the bangers on this album don't really get me dancing in the way that the albums on either side of Reputation, you have 1989, which had just again, the endless singles, and Lover, which might be my personal favorite album of Taylor Swift, behind Red maybe, but is just so upbeat. There's a lot more. This was her working through things album, and definitely the media needed this album to know that they couldn't just pick on her and that she would clap back. And now that she worked through this, I'm happy to see that, there was light at the end of the tunnel. Had this album in Reputation started a more downward trend, I think, of just angrier, more sullen kind of music, even the love songs of this album just sound sad and upset to me. It would have been bad if it had started a trend, but instead she put the work in, worked out her feelings, and some of these songs are real keepers, I think.
Was there anything about the album that surprised you? Because I do think that the common misconception is that Reputation is all about revenge and is very dark. I actually don't think it's really as dark as we think it is. And I don't know if you'll agree with me, Meg, as a fellow Swiftie.
Yeah,
I actually think it's kind
really
of like a love album.
It's kind of like her only album that doesn't have a "You Broke My Heart and I Hate You for It" song. And in fact, 12 out of the 15 songs on it are love songs. And the kind of darker production, I think, does lend itself to that, because the reason that Reputation is my, I think, second favorite album of Taylor's is because it is these love songs, but they're very mature in a way. In her previous albums, the love songs are very starry-eyed and fairy tale and everything's perfect. But every love song on Reputation kind of has this vibe of I am in love with you, and it's kind of difficult because the world is out to get me right now, but it's okay because you're also in love with me. And so it does have this very just kind of deep dark soundscape to it, even like the happiest songs on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and listening back to the album yesterday, I agree with you that there are some more uplifting songs like Gorgeous or Delicate. They're beautiful, happier songs. What I personally love about this album is the darker songs with the darker tones and feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, like there is that there too as well. If you like the angst and anguish. But yeah, I think that like, it's funny that Eric, you said your favorite album was Lover, because Lover is way more, upbeat in terms of production. But I actually feel like I always tell everybody that I could probably I could probably make like a super album out of like Lover and Reputation and just cut the songs that I don't particularly like, because I feel like in a lot of ways they're two sides of the same coin.
Well, this is the maybe the gateway then, this album, into just like that amazing insight, or the more lived side of life, the more lived end of relationships. Is just the way that you can tell just as emotionally fraught a story in a happier key just pleases me more. That's all. But
for
Taylor's growth has been remarkable as an artist, as a performer. I don't think anybody worked harder during the pandemic. Like, it's just utterly insane what she does now. The double album release is just unbelievable. I can't believe, look at her go. But it definitely starts from a place of, I know, I understand her songs aren't for the same people. Like, different people get different things out of her albums. That's all. Is, I prefer the very soul searching, introspective songs that also are happy, or at least upbeat, while being clapbacky, vicious, visceral, poetic, all that kind of stuff.
Knowing what we know now of the album, would you all say that Look What You Made Me Do is a good lead single in terms of being indicative of the album overall? Or is there a better single that she could have led with that would have been a better like snapshot of what we actually
Meg,
got in Reputation?
you had a thought on this about Look What You Made Me Do and Delicate. Would you care to share?
Yeah, well, when we were talking about the music videos for Look What You Made Me Do versus Delicate, and I had the thought that Look What You Made Me Do, the video, was really what people thought Reputation was going to be, but the Delicate song and video is what it actually is. And so I really don't think Look What You Made Me Do is indicative of the tone of the album, but I still do think it should have been the lead single, because I think that kind of bait and switch was necessary for this album. She needed to, say the public has hated me and now I'm clapping back and I'm showing that I'm angry, to get people to like go, oh, wow, she's standing up for herself. And then they came into the album expecting more of that. And there were like 2 or 3 songs like that. But the rest of the album is like, so there's this guy, and it's just like very just romantic and loving, the rest of it.
I had in our notes, I think it's a very enticing lead single. And so I agree with what Meg was saying. It grabs people's attention, it gets people talking, and then you're very curious about the rest of the album. That said, I think Delicate would have been a great lead single as well, because it has mass appeal and feels more like classic Taylor. But what's going to stand out? It's something like Look What You Made Me Do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's
agreed.
True. It's shock factor for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, to wrap things up, I thought that it would be fun to do some lightning round favorites and least favorites. So we can just go through these really quick. We don't have to pick over everybody's least favorites and favorites. So to kick us off, I wanted to know what your favorite track is and your least favorite track is.
Favorite, Look What You Made Me Do. Not just because it's the lead single. I still love that song. Least favorite, King of My Heart. It's just like too much auto-tune. The pacing of the song is all over the place, which I guess is part of the point. We were talking about heartbeats earlier. It kind of feels like a changing heartbeat. So it's just, the song just feels too messy to me.
My favorite on the album is Call It What You Want. I think that could be like the thesis of the album, with lyrics like, my castle crumbled overnight, but my baby loves me like I'm brand new. I think that really just sums up the album. My least favorite song on the album is Gorgeous. I really just can't vibe with the production. It's just a little too like bubbly, And then I also think that the lyrics are kind of mean. Like, I understand it's about being frustrated. Like, this person is so attractive. I'm mad that I can't have them. But I'm like, you don't got to be making fun of the way they talk. It just feels a little harsh, a little too harsh for me.
Right. How about you, Eric?
It's hard to pick. I think I want to spend more time with the album, particularly because I initially set aside Delicate, Gorgeous, and a couple others for like a re-listen, until I heard that Gorgeous was mean, and now I'm like, oh God, is it? Am I not in on the joke?
You should
No.
feel free to enjoy it if you want to.
I definitely want to spend more time with it, is what I'll say. But that's the benefit. I think this is the kind of album where there's just so much, and I've long felt the need to listen to the song, have the lyrics up as it's playing, then watch the music video, then watch a behind the scenes music video to explain what the music video was doing, and then watch a PowerPoint constructed by Pam to tell me all the finer ins and outs. And then I can give you an opinion on this album.
All right. My favorite track is Getaway Car, but Call It What You Want is a close second. So I agree with you, Meg. I love that song so much. And then my least favorite, it is a toss up between King of My Heart and Dancing with Our Hands Tied, specifically because of the production on both. I hate that they're so messy and just busy. But shout out to the acoustic version of King of My Heart, because that actually really lets a lot of those lyrics shine. So,
well, and the acoustic version of Dancing with Our Hands Tied at the Reputation Stadium tour. I prefer that to the studio version.
Yeah, see.
Okay, maybe I need to give King of My Heart acoustic a shot, and maybe I'll like it more.
Yeah.
Wait for Taylor's version.
Yeah, I might as well at this point.
So I also, because Taylor is known for her master songwriting, I would be remiss not to ask you all to tell me what your favorite lyric was off this album.
So it's hard to pick one lyric from such a large album. So to help me, I'm just picking something from my favorite song, Look What You Made Me Do. And it's the line, I got a list of names and yours is in red underlines. And part of the reason I like that lyric is the newspapers on the album cover. When you think about the long-running joke, what's black and white and red all over, I can't help but think that that's almost a reference to that joke. I know the red is like, maybe prioritizing that person's name, but I don't know. Maybe it's me just being a media dork, but I look at it from that angle, so that's my pick.
I have two favorite lines, one from kind of each side of the album. From the more Reputation side, my favorite line is from Endgame when she says, I bury hatchets, but I keep maps of where I put them. I think is just a really great way of summing up the whole thing with Kanye of like, yeah, we were friends again, but then you ruined it again. And then my favorite lyric from the more romantic side of the album is in New Year's Day, the line, I want your midnights, but I'll be cleaning up bottles with you on New Year's Day. I think that's just such a beautiful way of saying, I want the high parts. I want the best days, but I'm also going to be there on the more boring days, the downer days, doing the hard work for it.
I have a lyric picked out that's from Delicate, and it kind of sums up, it's like very in line with my favorite Swift song of all time, which is I Almost Do. It's just a moment of vulnerability from Red. But this line from Delicate is, sometimes I wonder when you sleep, are you ever dreaming of me? Sometimes when I look into your eyes, I pretend you're mine all the damn time. And then she's like, is it cool I said all that? I think it's delicate. But like, that to me is a universal experience. You don't have to have been on stage at the VMAs or even in the audience when Kanye did his horribly shitty thing to understand the emotion that she's conveying. That's where Taylor Swift is the best, I think, is when it's the most accessible and it touches me. It makes me feel things.
I'm so glad you said that, because I fully agree with you. I think that like the simplicity of some of her lyrics, those are usually the ones that really hit me like a ton of bricks.
I'm thrilled to hear that.
My favorite line off this album is just, is it cool that I said all that? Because I think that it's vulnerable. I think that it's brave. I think that it's relatable. I think, I just think that there's so much that's packed into so little. And
that is a good one.
Yeah. I love that line.
I love Delicate is a very close second of my favorite song on the album. It's just so good from the point of view of like the very start of a relationship where things are new and things are uncertain and things are very delicate, and like my reputation has never been worse, so you must like me for me. And I love the video for that because I think it really sums up a huge part of the Reputation album, which is her just being like, I just want to be loved for who I am without all this speculation about my life and my reputation. And she gets to do that in the video where it's like she's invisible and she gets to literally dance like no one is watching.
Well, Pam, I was reviewing the doc the other day, and I couldn't help but notice there wasn't one mention of Taylor's version in the plans, the highly anticipated Taylor's version. Now, you did mention it at the top of the show, but I was wondering if you would like to make a prediction as to when Taylor's version of this album will finally be released, because there's been a lot of talk of it happening sooner rather than later.
I feel like that I've just been so wrong every time I think it's coming. So I think that my next guess will be November 10th. Maybe she'll release it on the anniversary of Reputation. I really think she's holding December 13th for debut. Maybe not this December 13th, but maybe the next.
Taylor's version, the debut.
Yeah, the debut album. Like her self-titled album dropping on her birthday, December 13th.
I see. Okay, because I was going to say for her 35 birthday, here December 13th is going to be my guess.
But maybe we'll get debut before Reputation. I feel like that would be the ultimate power move on her part, because everybody's been assuming Reputation's coming first. But she might wait.
I bet before now and the end of the year she'll have a triple album release, totally separate, not Taylor's version, not anything, just boom.
That would surprise me at this point.
I like the theory that she's just going to drop Reputation, Taylor's version, out of the blue. And it's going to be like the quote where she was like, there will be no explanation. There will just be Reputation.
Oh, that'd be fun.
No lead up at all, no promo. It's just suddenly going to be here.
Well, I guess remains to be seen, but definitely am interested in reacting at least to the vault track. So you can look forward to that over on our YouTube, which is What the Hype Podcast. Definitely give us a like and subscribe over there, because it's just a free way to really help out the show. We're really trying to grow our audience over there, and we appreciate all you all do to help us out in that regard. And don't forget to follow us over on all of our social media channels as well, and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. We're talking about all different aspects of pop culture every week, not just Taylor talk on What the Hype. And we have a lot of fun episodes in store for you all. So we hope that you come along for the ride with us there. And that's the hype.
Thanks, Meg. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.